Live. Hi, Sarah.
Hey, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And I love seeing all the hearties already in the comments. And welcome to anybody who I haven't met yet. This is going to be fun.
Are those like Swifties?
Yeah, there's not as many of us, but we are true to our hearts.
Yeah.
It's such a great community, so I love it.
Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the community to another edition of Self-Publishing Insiders. And I'm so excited to have Sarah here. Welcome again, Sarah.
Thank you.
So
I
good to have.
realized just now looking that you have your last name there. I didn't even put my last name on there, but Sarra Cannon for anyone who is not familiar with me.
I'm so glad you're here. And for the community, I want to let you know that I tried to meet Sarah at the Novelist Inc. conference in November. When was that? September.
Yeah.
Um, she gave a wonderful presentation at NINC about the path back to joy and the 10 steps to reclaim your joy in your writing career. And I swear, within the first 5 minutes, I was like, oh my gosh, I have got to get Sarah on to Self-Publishing Insiders because everything, like you dropped so many gems in that presentation. I thought it was phenomenal. I took all the notes. I've got all the 10 steps. I refer back to it because it's
Oh,
not
great.
just for authors. I mean, it has wide appeal there.
Thank you. Yeah, I was like, okay, this is going to be sometimes those messages are hard hitting because we don't want to face them because we know there's something that's not going great with how we're doing things because we're
Yeah.
busy, we're stressed, we're overwhelmed, we're burning out,
Oh, absolutely.
but this is the message we have to hear to keep moving forward and to know that there is another way of doing things, that we don't have to be pushed to our limits and beyond to be successful. And sometimes it feels like we do, and we don't. There's really a way to do things differently. It just takes a little bit of courage and awareness. And so I'm always happy to share that message.
Fantastic. Yeah, you're definitely the master. And to give folks who may not be familiar with you a little bit of a taste on your background. So you're now the author of 28 novels, right? In both young adult and
28
new
novels.
adult.
Yeah, young adult, new adult, mostly fantasy, a few contemporary romances, but mostly young adult and new adult fantasy.
And over 1 million books sold now.
Yes, just hit that milestone this year, so it still feels a bit surreal.
Look at you. Okay, and then on top of that, you are the host of the popular Heart Breathings YouTube channel that's surpassed 65,000 subscribers now.
Yes, we're like almost to 66,000. So if you're not a subscriber, come join me over there.
All right, and you've got a couple of young children on top of it.
I do. Yeah, my son is 11 and my daughter is 4.
Okay, so if nobody else is blown away, like when I was going through your bio, I'm like, I got to get her in here because I need help, Sarah. Like, how do you do it? I'm all right. Well, we don't have to rush into how do you do it yet, but let's back up a little bit. Can you tell I'm excited? Like,
I'm excited too.
give
I
me all
can't
the
stop
secrets.
smiling.
Give me all the secrets. But it's not like okay, you got 28 books published, you've sold over 1 million copies, but it's not like you've been doing this for 30 years. You only started publishing back in 2010. But I thought what was interesting is that you had the wherewithal at that time to realize, well, hey, I'm self-publishing. I'm actually becoming an entrepreneur here. Maybe
Yes.
I ought to learn how to run a business and try to streamline my productivity. So
Yeah.
what kind of triggered that for you?
Oh my goodness. It's such a thing too, and I think writers are more aware of it now when they're getting into the indie world. They see so many examples of it of like, "Oh, okay, I know I've got to have my website and my newsletter and there's all these
Yeah.
things that I want to do and we feel we need to do them all," which we could talk about that more. But back in 2010, there were so many people saying, well, you're just stupid for doing this. Like, I can't believe you're going to ruin your career. This is like not a path that's viable. It's really only the path people take when they're not really good enough to get an agent. But
Yep.
I felt so drawn to it because I think I have that entrepreneurial spirit of I just want to do things the way that I want to do them, and
Hmm.
having that professional control over my stories and just the innovation of being able to say, well, I think I want to start a subscription, or I think I want to do this way, or
Yeah.
I don't want to have paperbacks, or I do want to go all in on audio. But the flip side of that entrepreneurial thing is that we have infinite possibilities of how we can be successful, and we see so many examples. And it
Yep.
was easier in that, like in 2010, there were things that were easier and things that were harder. It was easier because it seemed kind of like, well, you've got just these few vendors that you can put your books up on. There was Smashwords, which
Mhm.
is how you got to Apple. There was the month that I started self-publishing was the month that Barnes and Noble started Pubit, which is now Barnes and Noble Press. I think it's gone through a few iterations.
Mhm.
And there was Amazon. And those were basically the three places you could get into in 2010. And so it seemed pretty clear path. You tried, like, there wasn't really Facebook ads, there wasn't BookBubs and things like that. So it was like, okay, this is the path. And even though there wasn't a lot of examples out there,
Yeah.
it was a clear journey. Now, it's a good thing that we have all these opportunities and we have all these different ways. Like, you could just show up on Draft to Digital and you don't have to publish to each place individually. And that makes it so much more interesting, or so much more easy for people to get in.
Mhm.
But you could also just be like, I'm just going to go all in on subscription, and I'm not
Mhm.
going to do this other thing at all. Or I'm going to have a direct sales store, or I'm going to do a newsletter this way, or I'm going to do Substack. And it's like, the more we listen and see all the examples of the ways that everyone else has been successful, the more we start to pile that onto our own plate, thinking, I don't know which of these is going to be the one thing
Yeah.
that gets me to where I wanted to go. So I have to try them all, right? Or maybe I'm missing out, especially if we go all in on one path and then it doesn't get us the results we wanted fast enough. We think, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I should do what this person is doing over here. Maybe I should try this. Maybe I should do TikTok. Maybe I should do this. And that is what eats away at the joy, because really the more we scatter our focus, the less likely we are to be successful. But it's
Mhm.
that fear that keeps pushing us to put more and more and more on our plate. But like, for the majority of creative people that I know, if
Yep.
you're busy all the time on your business, you can't write.
So true. One thing that you said, I don't know if it was in your presentation or on your website, was that you had this epiphany that I was doing all these things that I felt that I should do versus things that I needed to do. Was it just the experience of going through these processes, or was it some of the classes that you took that really helped to call that out for you?
It was really just massive burnout for me that
Mm,
I started, in the beginning, it was all fun. It was like, nobody else is doing this and everybody thinks I'm crazy. So I'm going to go and I'm just going to have fun and I'm going
yeah.
to try experimental. And
Yep.
I actually had been working on books that I was expecting to put to a publisher or other things. And I had gone through this process of trying to please, oh, I need to write what an agent is going to want. And then when I allowed myself the freedom to self-publish, I got the word believe tattooed. I have it kind of as a reminder everywhere to just like believe in myself, trust
Wow.
myself. And it was fun. I wrote the story that I wanted to write. I didn't worry as much about whether an agent was going to like it. It was just like, this is what I want to do. But the more I found success, the more I got tapped into this, like, oh, if I want to be really successful, or if I want to be as successful, that kind of comparison game,
Mhm.
I've got to add these other things to my list. And then I
Yep.
would spend half a year working on projects that didn't move the needle at all. And then it's like, oh my gosh, hindsight, I can see so clearly, if I had just focused in on this strategy, or if I hadn't gotten so wrapped up in somebody telling me, oh, you know what, if you did this, you could hit the USA Today, or, just people genre jumping and saying, this is the one, this is the place you need to be.
Mhm.
I sort of lost my own true center,
Yeah.
stopped following what I felt was fun, and started really dialing into, what do I have to do? Because everyone says that I need to do this. And what is
Yeah.
everybody else doing? And I literally hit a point where I was like, I can't even get up in the morning and work on anything.
Yeah.
I kind of joke about it now, but it was it was a rough period of time.
Oh, sure.
My husband he was taking my son to school at the time. I didn't have my daughter yet. And they would leave the house and I would just lay on the couch, and I was binge eating. I was barely like sleeping. I was sleeping all the time during the day,
Yeah.
barely sleeping at night. And I was watching like investigation, discovery, like true crime documentaries all day long, just trying to completely tune out of my life. And I was like, why is this happening? Because I just had my most successful year ever.
Yeah.
And I had to really sort of bring myself back from a dark place and do a lot of soul searching of like, why is this not fun for me anymore? Why am I struggling so difficult, like with my mental health? Why am I not able to perform when I've just gotten to the level of success that I've been working so hard to get to?
Yeah.
And it took a good year or more to really kind of pull myself back from that edge and get back to a place of joy. And I find that was like 2015.
Okay.
So here we are 8 years later, and I still find that every few years I have to recalibrate myself because we hear and see so much noise of what everybody else is doing. And, you know, I know that it's not true for everybody, but there's a lot of us that see that certain level of success, like #1 in the store, top 10 books of the year, Goodreads choice. And we think, oh, that's what I should be aiming for. And if I don't have it, it means I'm not as good. Or, you know, the authors now that are like 7-figure authors, and you think, well, that's got to be the goal then. Right? Like I should want to be a 7-figure author. And we don't stop to actually ask ourselves, I mean, is that the life I want or not? Like we'd all love to make $1 million a year. Yep. That sounds really great, but we often don't think about the sacrifices that some of those authors are making, which is not a judgment on them. Like I'm in awe of anyone who's done that. And there are 7-figure authors who outsource a lot of their work and they're chill and they're happy, but it's like, I know a lot of 6- and 7-figure authors who say, I really hate this now. And I really wish I hadn't made the choices that I made because I don't even like writing anymore. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that breaks my heart.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate you opening up and that vulnerability. When you were going through your checklist, like toward the end of the year, and you were noticing like, I'm not hitting the things I thought I was supposed to hit, these objectives, how many years did it take you before you finally, like when you got to your lowest point? Was it a years-long process of you feeling that you weren't hitting the objectives that you're trying to hit year in and year out, and then you kind of hit that point of like, oh, I just can't get out of bed anymore, I can't get moving anymore?
It was strangely the opposite.
Okay.
I found success pretty quickly, and ironically, I found success through Apple and Barnes and Noble way faster than I did Amazon, which you hear so many people these days. I mean, obviously Kindle Unlimited didn't exist back then and things were very different, but I took off pretty quickly and I really just wrote my books. Like I fell into rapid release strategy faster without it being a strategy. It was just, oh my gosh, I'm loving this so much. I just want to get books out and interact with fans. And so it was really more of a success trajectory. And then I had my biggest year ever, made over $200,000 on my books. And that, I mean, that blew my mind so much because I was just like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
But there was some kind of, I don't know if you've ever heard of Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Limit, or no, The Big Leap. He talks about upper limits.
Okay.
And when I hit this, what to me was extreme success, there was some part of me that said, you don't deserve this. You can't sustain this. And I think it was the marriage of hitting the success, which some part of my, like, I've heard Kate Northrup kind of describe this before as like everybody has a temperature success sort of monitor, you know, and once you hit this level, like a thermostat, once you hit this level, if you go above it, you're going to sabotage yourself because you don't really believe that you're capable of staying at this level. And I think that's what happened to me. And it was the combination of hitting above what I thought I was really deserving of, as well as I had sort of pushed myself to a limit, stopped thinking so much about what I wanted to write. And I was thinking about what does everyone else expect of me? What's going to be more successful? What's going to be, Envy was saying thermometer. I'm like, yes, there's a word here. Thermostat, thermometer. I think those things are what kind of pushed me down to a low level. And yeah, imposter syndrome, Kelly, it's that
Sure.
feeling of like, I don't really deserve to be here. And I think this is part of why I try to bring joy and vulnerability. Like sometimes it makes me a target for people criticizing, like, oh, you're not, like, I don't know, just things that people will say because I tell the truth about how I'm feeling. Like,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you saying, oh, she's the master, but like, I still go through those low points. I still push myself
Well, sure.
harder than I should. I
Yeah.
still have to bring myself back to a place of joy with intention. But I think the reason that I talk about the joy and the process so much more than I talk about the sales and the strategy is because there are infinite paths to the numbers that you want to hit,
Hmm.
but it's almost never in this business going to be a straight line all the way up.
Yeah.
Everybody goes through ups and downs. And if you want to have this sustainable career for yourself, it's learning how to navigate those really high highs that are going to push you outside of that thermometer, that thermostat. They're going to throw you into a place where potentially it triggers some kind of internal feeling of I don't deserve this, and
Hmm.
self-sabotage and depression that you can't really understand. Or you go, maybe you had a little bit of success, or you had to take a break from your writing for a while, and you see that momentum start to fade, and you start to feel like this isn't worth it. Nobody's listening. I'm putting all this work in and I'm not getting the result. And to really create a sustainable career, I think we need to learn how to find the joy in the process itself rather than judging our worth, judging our work solely on the sales numbers and the outside and external side of this business, because that's just a dangerous place. Because if you're only judging your worth by how fast your bank account is going up, how
Yeah.
many sales you're making every month, you're just holding yourself to an impossible standard that is eventually going to crash on you, because nobody can be number one bestseller every day of the week. Like it just doesn't, it's not sustainable.
Yeah. That is so true. Sorry, my dog was just like busting out of the desk here.
Oh my gosh, I want a dog.
Big German Shepherd. That's so true. And I don't know of a single like, successful or ultra successful person who doesn't have those moments of I don't know, valleys, I guess,
Mhm.
where they're
Yeah.
just feeling like a fraud. They're feeling like they don't deserve to be where they are.
Yeah.
And I love how you said like just every once in a while take some time to recalibrate. Like it's okay, just recalibrate. Like where am I today? Where was I where was I 3 months ago, and where do I want to be? At least this is how I take it. Or where do I want to be at the end of 2024?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I did want to ask you. So when you began publishing in 2010 and you began taking those classes, did you begin taking the classes, the productivity and the business classes fairly soon, or was it like a year or two later?
It was definitely later. So I started out just sort of winging it. I
Yeah.
was watching what are other people doing. I was experimenting. I really had no idea. And I think it was right around that 2014, 2015 period, just before I had the low point, that I started taking a few courses where I said, you know, I'm kind of watching what authors in the indie space are doing. And this is no offense to authors who can
Yeah.
be very savvy, but at the time it was like none of the authors in my sphere had any business experience, any business courses, any productivity courses. They too were just kind of winging it and then saying like, here's what you do. And I thought maybe I should actually get some training
Right.
from people who have run online businesses before and see if I can sort of marry the two sort of wisdoms. And so I took Marie Forleo's B School, and that was super, super helpful just to even understand the importance of, like, at the time I had no email list and I kept telling people, oh, I don't want to bug people with email. And now I obviously understand how important it is to have an email list, a nice website, all these different things. So that taught me some of the basics. And then after I went through this period of depression, I started when I started bringing myself back up. The only way that I could really get anything done was to take Post-it notes. I was like, I'm sure I've got some on my
Yep.
desk somewhere here. Take Post-it notes and put them up on my monitor or put them up on my desk or my board so that I could say, okay, if I'm in a bad mood or no matter how dark things are, I've got 3 Post-it notes right there. I'm just going to focus on those 3 things, and I'm not going to listen to what anybody else is doing. I'm just going to do those 3 things. And that led me to one of my friends saying, oh, have you ever heard of a Kanban board? Because that's like a workflow, visual workflow where they use Post-it notes. And I was like, I've never heard of that. And that moment changed my life forever, because what it allowed me to do was create a system on my wall that was visual and in my face at all times that said, these are the things that I have to do.
Yep.
And any other new things, I can evaluate them, but I was no longer living in this constant state of like whiplash of like, what's everybody else doing, and constantly changing my strategy and never really seeing anything come to fruition.
I'm laughing because I'm like, boy, that sounds familiar.
It does. I mean, so many of us do it because it's a natural thing to see what everyone else is doing and feel like I need to do it. But what I started to realize was I have to focus myself in so that I can actually follow through and see, like, as people in business say, so I could ship it, so I could get it done and actually publish the book. And that's when I discovered, through getting kind of obsessed with productivity books and things, I discovered a guy called Todd Herman who had a course called 90 Day Year. And that is kind of where I learned to take big goals and break them down into smaller projects and tasks in a quarterly fashion. So I started marrying this idea of Kanban boards and productivity and 90-day planning, and created a system that I started using for myself, where I had, 3 sets of Post-it notes, 3 main goals, and every single task I was going to do for 90 days was broken down on my board. Gotcha. And so all of those courses kind of made a difference for me, even though none of them were writing courses. They were all sort of like productivity and business courses. And I would say, I think I took 90 Day Year in 2016.
Gotcha.
That feels right.
And I just want to let everybody know, like, don't worry, we're going to get to the tips.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying this conversation like too much right now. And what was the catalyst for you saying, hey, like, I need to bring this to other authors as well? Like, because you started doing that in 2018, right?
It's yes, so February 2018. So we're coming up on 6 years since I started my YouTube channel, which it has also just changed my life so much. I'm so glad I took that leap, even though I was terrified. I was spending a lot of my time one-on-one DMs, one-on-one conversations with people who wanted very badly to self-publish, and saw, the level of success that I had or had seen me speak at a conference or, something else, and liked what I had to say about the joy. Because in a lot of Facebook groups, even now, but also at the time, I started seeing a lot of people give newer writers the advice of, screw writing what you love. Sorry if that's bad language for this channel, but that was, don't write what you love, write for the market. This is business. Put your business hat on. Who cares if you like fantasy? This is what sells. This is what you need to write. And a lot of people were saying that was the best advice I ever got. And then 2 years later, they'd come back and say, I am miserable.
Just totally burn out.
Totally burned out, not getting the results because I'm writing to trend. I don't understand what's happening. And I just got I got more and more frustrated that I started like, there is a path where you don't have to just write what everyone else says. Like, there is value in writing to market, but that doesn't necessarily mean exactly writing to this trend and not writing what you love. And my husband called me an indie evangelist, because I just started like really preaching on that, because I just felt it was the message that I needed to get out of my heart. And then there came a point where my husband, George, who has been pivotal in my whole career, he says, you're spending way too much time in DMs and Facebook groups talking people through this. If you would just start a YouTube channel. Because at the time I have this obsession with washi tape and planners and things like that. And I watched a lot of YouTube, particularly planner YouTube and productivity YouTube. And he was like, you could share your planners, you could share all these things. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. And I thought that what it would be is, I'm going to put these things out there. And then when people ask me about it in Facebook groups, I can say, oh, I made a video on this. But it actually turned into like something so much more. I mean, incredibly more than that. But that was kind of the catalyst. And then I had like, my Kanban boards are on the wall where I can see them from here, but I had those boards with all of the Post-it notes behind me in my videos, and people kept asking me, "Oh, is that your plot?" And I was like, "Oh, no, actually that's my productivity." And so
Gotcha.
it kind of all spun out of that. And now I have an entire course and a planner on it. So, I'm constantly just sort of following
Yeah.
the next step of what feels good.
Awesome. We'll get to that course, but I want everybody to know that here's the YouTube channel for Heart Breathings where you can see a lot of those videos, those awesome videos. I'm going to bring up a quick comment here. Where did you go? Comment. There's a lot of comments, and I appreciate you guys all being involved. All you hearties. All right. Ron says, "Okay, any tips for us to find that joy and balance?" I'm
Yeah,
glad
and
you asked, Ron. Do you want to pivot and get into the 10 steps?
absolutely.
Can we
And
do that?
really it's already been kind of woven in so
Yeah.
much in this conversation, because one of the biggest things I feel like, well, and part of the whole Heart Breathing's name, which I also ended up getting tattooed on me, is a Wordsworth quote that says, "Fill your paper with the breathings of your heart." And that is really about writing what you love to write. And I truly feel like the best success,
Yep.
and the more successful and the more results we see from this, obviously, the more fun it hopefully is going to be, and the more joyful it will be, because we're making money, we're writing the
Yeah.
stories we love, like that's the dream. And so part of that is really getting back to what you loved about writing to begin with, the types of stories you most want to tell. And sometimes it's a complex conversation, because yes, there are some types of stories that are just not ever going to sell as well as other types of stories.
Yep.
But at the same time, I feel like everybody can find that sort of Venn diagram between like what readers want and what you love to write. And when you can find that, that's where a lot of the joy begins. And that also is
Mhm.
part of where the balance begins, because you don't try to do everything and be everything to everyone. You're just trying to be who you are. And that makes a big difference. So that's definitely one of the tips. I know when I started that conversation at NINC, that presentation
Yeah.
at NINC, one of the things that really has been on my mind a lot this year too is this idea that the number of things that we can put on our plate as entrepreneurs, as authors, because like I feel like we have it so much worse in terms of the number of decisions that we make than most entrepreneurs, because not only are we have all the decisions about our business, we also have all the decisions about our stories and our characters, and that's like double the decisions. And I think there were some studies out there about how entrepreneurs make more decisions than anyone. And so authorpreneurs probably make more decisions than just about anybody on the planet. And so we have constantly, all these things to figure out, all this stuff that we could put on our plate.
Mhm.
And it's like, should we do TikTok? Should we do this? Should we do that? And we keep piling things on, but we don't actually our time doesn't expand. We still
Right.
have the same amount of time. So now we've taken, 40 hours a week, if we're lucky to have that amount of time. Many authors only have 10 or 20 hours a week. So we take that time and we just keep cramming more and more stuff into it. It's like a giant suitcase that we're just like, a suitcase is, if you think about that as a metaphor, it's like a limited space. But we're just continuing to pile more and more stuff onto it. And then where the problem with joy or lack of joy and balance comes is that because time is, not always something we really sit and analyze and can see visually. It's just something that's always going by. We don't realize how much we're packing into that suitcase. And so when we don't follow through, when we don't show up the way we meant to, when we fail, when we don't see the sales, when we don't, oh, I was going to do those Instagram posts, or, oh my gosh, my TikTok isn't growing,
Yeah.
we blame ourselves.
Oh, of
But the
course.
truth is, we don't see we don't see the reality that we were trying to cram 500 hours worth of work into the last 40. And we keep piling those expectations on. And it's like putting on, I keep using this like backpack suitcase, but it's like putting on a backpack that you just keep putting pounds and pounds and pounds into you, there's only so long you're going to be able to carry that joyfully before you just crushed under the weight of it. But that's what we do to ourselves. And instead of taking the backpack off and trying to really say, well, what's really working here? What's really bringing me the results? What's really bringing me the joy? We just say, oh, I'm worthless. I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve to be here. I'm not as good as this other person. And the more we pile on ourselves, the more we put ourselves down, the more we think and believe that we're not good enough, the more we just completely steal and drain all joy out of the process of writing the book.
I'm so guilty of that. I'll just tell everybody right now, like I'm constantly beating myself up. Like I think why is it that we are, or we tend to be our own worst critics sometimes?
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up NV Rose's question here because I think it fits perfectly into what you were just saying. In a matter of looking at balance, what are some tips on how to feel safe and or sustaining balance while we ride the roller coaster of ups and downs? Feeling safe, I think, is really important.
Let me tell you, safety is such a big thing too, because, you know, for a lot of us, we're taking a big risk, not only of putting our work out there where people can criticize it, and they will, they will, because there's going to be reviews. There's a place for them to tell you what they think of it.
For sure.
But there's also the comparison. People share their numbers. You can hear like how much more successful we see the metrics of other people's social media. And then there's also the matter of money. Money for many people, if we don't have money, we don't feel safe. We can't pay the bills. We don't feel, and when we talk about a business where there's a roller coaster of ups and downs, how do you make sure that you're making enough money with what you're doing? And that is part of the difficulty of the joy balance equation here, is because, well, yes, it's easy to say, write what you love, but like I have to make money to feel safe and to support my family. And those are realities of this business. And I think the biggest advice that I have for that is be smart of where you're spending your money. Pay attention to where the money's coming from, and, be willing to let go of stuff that isn't necessarily working for you and your business, but also do the best you can to find that safety and that feeling of personal worth outside of the money, outside of the numbers and those kind of things. Because that's, in this business, it's just going to always be up and down. And I don't know a single author who year after year after year has just made more and more and more and more money. I don't know anybody. Even the people that are making 7 figures, they still will have the years where it's like, oh my gosh, I made half as much as I made last year. And I know authors that when Kindle Unlimited started, they suddenly were making 5% of what they had made in previous years. And then there are other authors who make, 500% more. And it's unpredictable sometimes exactly what that's going to be like. And that can really mess with our sense of safety. And so what I am always working toward is, how can I find that sense of safety inside myself, inside my small community, inside our Heart Breathings community, in community with other authors that I know are going to cheerlead me and support me. And part of that comes from one of the tips that I shared at the NINC conference, which is trust yourself. Because we can't trust Amazon. We can't trust the vendors to do exactly what we expect. We can be grateful for these opportunities to publish, but we can't trust that tomorrow the rules are going to be the same. The game changes, and so learning to trust yourself. Like there's a quote that, if anybody knows who actually said this, but online it's often just attributed to anonymous, is that a bird sitting in a tree is never afraid of the branch breaking, because its trust is not on the branch. Right. The trust is on its own wings. And I think about that a lot, because the self-publishing branch, there are lots of different branches out there. And some of them we may decide we're going to put all in on this series, or we're going to go all in on this strategy. And that branch just falls. I mean, the industry changes, the genre changes, something doesn't come through. Readers didn't like your heroine, and you just spent 5 years writing these books to rapid release them. Like, there are things that are going to happen, and that branch is going to break. So if your trust is on the strategy only, or on the vendor only, maybe you're not as in a safe enough place as you would be if you trusted yourself and you began to work on this courage and trust that you said, no matter what happens, I know that my books are good. I know that I'm saving up money where I can, that I'm being smart about where I'm spending my time. I trust myself that I can always get out of whatever situation I find myself in. I know how to pivot. I know how to be innovative. I know how to pick myself back up. And sometimes for me, that means relying on looking at my past and being able to see all the times, like I've gone through 2 house fires. I've gone through trauma. I've had those things, and we all have had those events in our lives where we had to pick ourselves back up and reinvent ourselves or be strong through something difficult. And you can look at that and say, I can trust myself because no matter what happens, no matter what branch breaks, I know how to fly. And when you can trust that in yourself, that's part of where that safety and that joy begins to come from. Because when we act out of pure fear, we are often making decisions that we just feel that we have to make or that people expect us to make. And that's not always going to be the decision that will really lead us to our greatest success. Most of the people I know, and definitely in my own life, the decisions that have led me to my greatest success have been the decisions that were made from a place of joy, from a place of fun, from a place of true alignment. And that, to me, I know that as long as I can find that place where I'm not afraid and I trust myself, that I am going to be okay.
And I would
that's
venture
where
to
my safety comes from.
I'd venture to guess, Sarah, that some of those decisions weren't the easiest decisions for you to make at those times.
They weren't. And those decisions can be scary sometimes too, because you're going against the grain or you're doing things that people tell you shouldn't do, or it doesn't seem like the smartest choice, from the outside. But I think and believe that this sounds more woo woo. Sorry for anybody here that is not, this is not your thing.
Hey,
but
I'm all about the woo woo. Bring it on.
I think we all have an internal compass. We all have that internal voice that says, this is who you are, and this is how you want to show up. This is how you want to be in the world. And so often that voice gets drowned out by all the shoulds. This is what I should do. This is what people say I should do. This is the genre. Like, you see a genre taking off and people will say, oh, we got to jump on that. And for some people, that's what they should do, because that's what's fun for them. It's like, oh, I love writing different genres. I love exploring this. And so go where that fun is. But for some of us, the minute we try to do what everybody else thinks that we should do, or the minute we try to do something that really isn't us, like, I talk about this sometimes, that I wrote a book. It's this one. I was like, how does this video work? This one, The Trouble with Goodbye. And it was my only contemporary book at the time. I had been writing fantasy, but new adult had just taken off. And it was this very like coming of age in a college setting, very emotional books. And I had some personal experience that I felt like, oh my gosh, I have wanted to write this book forever. And now's the perfect time. So I did write that book. And so many people that read it as beta readers were like, oh, this book is going to hit the USA Today. And I had watched a lot of other young adult authors that had been writing fantasy with me jump into this trend of new adult books. And they did hit the USA Today. And I was like, this is going to be like, I had these expectations. But then by the time the book came out, new adult had started becoming a lot steamier and sexier books. And my book was not that at all. And so my book did well, but it didn't do as well as if it had probably come out 2 or 3 months previously. Oh, is that the puppy? Not the dog. It didn't do as well. And so I listened to a lot of friends that said the next book needs to be really sexy. And that, I know some people can say, oh, like she's judging sexy books, which I am not at all. Like I am all for people writing everything they want to write, but that was not necessarily the type of book that I had started that series with. It wasn't true to that brand. It wasn't true to what I had wanted to write in that. But I started that second book in that series with a sexy scene. And that book comes back around to kind of my like more emotional core in that particular romance. But I sort of lost my audience. That second book in the series sold really, really well, but all the subsequent books in that series did not, because a lot of people wanted the same thing from the first book into the second, and I didn't give them that. And that was not because that was what I wanted to do. It was because I listened to all the people that told me, you need to do it this way. If you want that success, you have to write sexier, you have to write steamier. This has to be bigger, bigger and better. And anytime I can point to things that I did that didn't feel right to me, I can always point to a mistake that I made. And it's a
Oh,
lesson learned, but at the same time, I
yeah.
think, and this is part of joy. So when we talk about joy tips, like setting healthy boundaries,
Yeah.
this is things that we don't talk about a lot either. We talk about how to do all the things, but we don't really talk always about how to set good boundaries for ourselves. Not only boundaries with our readers, but boundaries whose advice we're going to take,
Yeah.
boundaries of what is like my genre that I love. What are the things I'm willing to do to make it in this business? And what are the things I'm simply not willing to do in this business? And so finding that internal core within ourselves that says, this is who you are. This is what you write. This is what you most want to do. These are the stories you most want to tell. I think, that plays so much into joy, not only in the boundaries, but also in terms of self-trust and loving what you're doing.
It's so hard too, especially like you mentioned earlier, when there are other authors who might be earning more than you, and they're giving you the advice. Sometimes that advice isn't even asked for, but they're giving you the advice to do something else or do it differently than what you're feeling that you should do. And that goes
Yeah.
back to your trust yourself,
So
which
true.
is really hard to do.
It's hard to do, but it's
Take practice.
also, it's also about like, that was part of my core value with starting Heart Breathings was I want to start a community that feels like we're all supporting each other in following your heart, not necessarily in pushing each other to how can you make more money. And I mean, we all hope that we do end up making more money too, but we do it in a way that still feels good and that still feels like we're being true to ourselves. So
Sure. I wanted to bring up this question from our very own Alyssa because it kind of tied into what you were talking about just a little while ago. Alyssa asked, does genre saturation deter you from writing what you want? And should it?
should is such a tricky word, right? Sometimes it does. I think it does matter because I think a lot of people jump on trends because it sells, but then what they often find is that trend quickly becomes very saturated. And so even though it's like the it genre, it's only like the top 5% of writers who are actually making money in that genre, and everyone else just kind of disappears and fades into it. And so I think in terms of genre saturation, it kind of depends on how early you are in that trend of making a name for yourself, how much it really is something you want to write that you can do well, that you really understand why it is that the people who read it love that genre, rather than just, I don't read that stuff, but I'm going to write it so I can make money. Like that very rarely is a recipe for success. Or Envy says, if you're a slow writer, by the time you release it, the trend is gone, which is what happened to me. New Adult very quickly went from that sort of more emotional tearjerker book to like, really steamy books. And I missed that trend almost entirely. And so sometimes that saturation also leads to the trend evolving very quickly. And so I think in terms of the should it's like, know your own strengths. How much do you enjoy playing that game in terms of, I mean, I call it a game because I try to gamify everything, but how much do you enjoy that process of getting in there, really learning what it is that people love about it, getting into the competition, marketing yourself. But I think at the core of it, when we talk about joy and balance, it's a moment of saying, I'm thinking about writing this genre that's really saturated. Step back and say, is this really what I want to do? Or am I being influenced by outside things that aren't actually important to me?
Yeah, that's really powerful. We're getting to the end of time. I knew this conversation was going to fly by. Such powerful advice. But before we get to the end, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the HB90 course because that is beginning really soon. Can you tell us what that's all about and when it begins, and if people can still sign up if there's room in the class?
Yeah, absolutely. There's room for anybody. I don't cut off at a number. So it's open until December 10th and we start that day. And I'm so excited. So we're in enrollment period now. I run the course every quarter. So if now isn't a good time for you, you can check back in with us like March. And it's always the first or the last month of the quarter. But it's a 90-day planning course that really it's not just logical. There are a lot of practical action steps in this class of how to set goals, how to focus yourself in, how to break your goals down into achievable tasks that match up with the amount of time that you have available. So it's got the practical advice, but there's also like if what I'm talking about today resonates with you in terms of the joy and the balance, there's a lot of that in the class too, because I never am one to teach like just push yourself as hard as you can. It's really about how do we create a sustainable way of saying these are the things that are moving the needle for me, that are getting outcomes that fit within my available time. And that is such a huge part of joy in this process, is not overloading our plates to where we can't be creators anymore.
Gotcha. Can people is it heartbreathings.com? I thought I had the URL, but I don't.
It's actually teachable.heartbreathings.com. But if you go to heartbreathings.com and just click on my latest YouTube video where I'm talking about winning NaNoWriMo last night, 50K words.
Oh, you beat it. Okay, good.
It's in the description there.
Okay.
So if you want to check that out too. But just to talk about like that process of joy, like so often what I find is the more joyful I am in my process, the more joyful I am with the things that I'm doing, because they're my choice of what I wanted to be doing, the more I get done. And the more I pile on things that don't align with who I am, that aren't really what I want to do, I'm just doing them because I feel like everybody told me I should. I use TikTok as an example a lot. Like if I was not following my own system of joy, I would have been probably wasting a lot of my time on TikTok. Because it feels like everybody tells you that's like the biggest way to get new book readers and things. And it is such a huge platform for that. But it's not necessarily something that aligns with where I am right now to do short form video. I talk a lot. It's just who I am. So that it doesn't necessarily align for me.
Well, that's why you're here. That's why we wanted you here.
Podcasts, YouTube, that's more my thing, right? But it just because it's a powerful tool does not mean it's my most powerful tool. And I think that plays, it sounds like a productivity thing, but it's such a joy thing too, because we can just suck the joy out of every step of the process when we do things and we jump into things that aren't really tools that are aligned with who we are and how we want to show up in this business, just because we feel like because it's a powerful tool for other people, I have to do it. And I think that's another piece of it is the I have to do it. You have to do it this way.
Right.
There is that doesn't really exist in this industry. Like there is no have to. Even some people will say, well, the only have to is that you have to write books. And like that's not even true anymore, because AI can write books for you apparently, or ghostwriters can write books for you. It's like there are so many different ways and I'm not advocating for either of those things necessarily or judging against them. I'm just saying like all the possibilities are out there. And so the only have to is really put work out there that people can purchase in some way or that you can make money off of. That's the only have to be an indie author. And I think when we can take a step back and say, okay, well, who am I and what do I really want to do and who do I want to be and how do I want to show up in this world? Then we can start to craft a plan that is working on the belief that like, if I follow my own heart and write what I really love, but I'm smart about the market, I can be successful.
That's beautiful. That's a great place.
That's where joy comes from to me.
We're at time, but I wanted to ask you one final question. And sorry, everybody, if we've gone over time.
Listen, if they're my crew, they know we were going to go over time, right?
There's nothing wrong with going over a little bit. Come on. Do you have one final piece of advice? Let's say that there is an aspiring author who hasn't published her first book yet, and maybe she's just logging on to our channel, or she's heard your name and she's watched a couple of your videos as well. What would you tell that aspiring author who's maybe feeling a little uneasy or unsure of herself, just doesn't know where to begin because she's been blasted by the indie author community fire hose?
Yeah.
What's one piece of advice you would give that person?
I would say, number one, don't get too wrapped up in what everybody else is doing. imagine that all the things that everybody else is doing with their time, every other way that people are finding success, none of it is a have to. It's all just a big buffet of possibilities. And your job is to figure out as best you can for the moment, what is it that you really want? What do you want out of this business? How do you want to feel? How much time do you want to work? How much time can you sustainably work? What's your process? Figuring out yourself, and then looking at all the buffet of possibilities and saying, which of these things seem to be good for me? Which sounds interesting to me? Okay. And which things are going to move the needle the most that I can reasonably put on my plate with the time that I have available? Can't do it all, and just go ahead and let go of that fact that, like, over the course of the next 10 years, maybe I can add in all these things. But the same way that you go to a buffet and you're eating, you can't possibly eat a whole plate full of every dish there. Just pick and choose, and know that you are standing in a place of power where you live and work in a career where any combination of those dishes, those possibilities, can lead to massive success. Any combination. And just have faith that and trust yourself to know that you'll be led to the things and the pieces of that puzzle that are going to be the most important. Build that foundation first, and then say, okay, I'm seeing this result. Start to be aware. I think part of it is when we go to conferences, when we watch a lot of podcasts, we listen. I like that idea of the indie fire hose. When we pay attention to all those things, it suddenly feels like I have to do all this or I'm not going to find success. So if you can step back and say, oh, I'm going to find success because I love this and I'm drawn to it and I love my stories and I believe in that.
Yep.
The rest of it is just what I call cherry on top energy. The rest of it is just the cherry on top. Okay, email list. That's going to make me a little bit more successful. That's just a cherry on top. Instead of approaching it all with fear of, I have to do it. And if I don't, I'm never going to get where I want to go. It's like, oh, all of these are possibilities. I can do any of these. And when you can stand from that place of confidence and just picking what aligns for you, you're more likely, in my opinion, to make the best decisions that are going to naturally lead you to the best success for you.
I love it. Thank you so much. You are a gem, Sarra. I'm so glad you joined. I told you guys this was going to be a good one. I was so looking forward to it. Can you hang out for a second, Sarra?
Absolutely.
I got to go through all the stuff here. Everybody else, if you could like, share, comment, and subscribe to this channel, to Self-Publishing Insiders, we would really appreciate it, because that helps us attract guests like Sarra to help you with your author careers. Also, be sure to bookmark dddlive.com, because when you go there, it will show you what the next week's topic is going to be and who our guest is going to be. And finally, if you are that aspiring author out there who's just maybe taking your first baby steps into the indie community waters, why not sign up for your free account at drafttodigital.com. Thank you all for joining. I am going to run a quick 30-second Draft to Digital DDD print spot here. But again, thanks everybody for joining. Sarra, we so appreciate your time. For everybody else, we will see you here next week.
Ebooks are great, but there's just something about having your words in print. Something you can hold in your hands, put on a shelf, sign for a reader. That's why we created DDD Print, a print-on-demand service that was built for you. We have free, beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound cover for print. So many options for you and your books. And you can get started right now at drafttodigital.com.